welcome back to my YouTube channel, and you are watching The Nerdy Grail. Now, this is the start of a brand new series on my channel, which I'm simply titling The Symbiote Saga, whereby I will be going through different examples of Peter Parker going through his symbiote alien costume arc and determining whether they were done well or whether they were a bit rushed or underwhelming. And these will vary from TV shows, video games, and movies themselves. And in today's video, we will be starting with Marvel Insomniacs Spider-Man 2, which came out last year. I thought it was relevant to do it now, as it is practically the 1-year anniversary of this title, and it is a fantastic game. So how this is going to work is I'm going to be discussing 3 different elements of the symbiote arc in Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Firstly, we're going to be talking about the design of the symbiote costumes. Then we're going to also be talking about the gameplay and see how it differs from the regular suit Spider-Man and from the first game. And then finally, we are going to be taking a deep dive into the actual story of the game itself. But keep in mind, we are only focusing on when Peter wears the symbiote himself. So we will not be discussing when, spoiler alert, Harry Osborn takes the symbiote from Peter and becomes Venom. But we're going to waste no more time and jump straight into this, beginning with the costume design of the symbiote in this game. So in terms of design for Insomniacs Spider-Man 2's symbiote arc, the design of the costume, it's got 2 different variants of the costume. The first just being listed as the black suit, and then later on during the arc, it transforms into what is then known as the symbiote suit. So this sort of gives me vibes of another symbiote arc that I'm going to be talking about in another video during the Symbiote Saga, Spectacular Spider-Man, where we see 3 different variants of the black suit. One being a literal black variant of his costume, the second being like a half morph where the webbing has started to disappear, and then the full variant where all the webbing's gone and it's a bit like the symbiote suit in this particular game. But we'll get to that when we get to Spectacular Spider-Man. In this game, however, it seems to almost cut out the first part, because we start with the black suit, which seems to have like almost like armor plating to it. It's quite rough, whereas obviously the normal suit is a little bit more sleek. It includes obviously the spider emblem on the front and the back, which has changed a little bit. And also you can see little patches on this black suit of like a slimy, gooey texture. So you can see how the symbiote has sort of morphed its way onto the body and is holding the suit together and keeping itself intact. It is obviously in the early stages of the symbiote arc as well, where Peter is not as aggressive yet, but you can see some changes to his mood and the way he moves around and fights bad guys. I do kind of like this particular variant of the costume. It's got very hints to the original, like the 90s alien costume from the 90s TV show and the early comics as well. The helmet, it looks quite interesting. I say the helmet. The mask almost looks like a helmet because you can see like a shiny glimmer of the mask, and then there's like a gooey texture on the back, so it almost feels like it's become a helmet. It is interesting. It's a decent design for the symbiote costume, I'm not going to lie. But you don't get to see it for very long. It's only used for a couple of missions. When then, unfortunately, it does start to then change after a fight with the lizard and exposure to the meteorite. His suit does then start to morph, and he loses that armor texture to it. And it starts to become more of a symbiote suit. But I do really like the design. It would have been nice to have seen like a more a web version, a normal variant of the costume that was literally just a black version of the Insomniac suit. But then you move on to the symbiote suit, which is like a more jagged variant of the costume. It lacks that segmented pieces, like I said about a helmet for the first variant. It lacks that. It's all more like it's just fused to his skin, and you can just see tendrils everywhere, almost something like veins almost. His eyes have narrowed, gotten a bit more closer together, almost jagged in a way, which is almost invoking like an angry expression, really, showing that he's sort of starting to lose control. Yeah, and it's a lot more of an intimidating look. And by that point in the story as well, Peter is almost completely lost the plot, really. He starts using more black tendrils that come out of his back as well, as you can see in some of the clips, like he does it to Martin Lee. And it is quite a scary looking costume, which is really good for the tone of the game at that point, which we will discuss later in the story missions. But overall, I do kind of like the symbiote suit. It is really, really good. I do slightly prefer the black suit, but I think both the suits in this game are done really, really well, in my personal opinion. That's just my taste. But that is the design. So now we're going to have a little deep dive into the gameplay of the black suit in Insomniacs Spider-Man 2. If we move on to the gameplay side of the black suit and symbiote suit in Marvel Spider-Man 2, it has been given a bit of a mixed reception, and I'm no different as well. I think it's both fun, but it almost feels like they did rush it a little bit, because there's not an awful lot that changed, really, and it could have been done a lot better, if I'm being perfectly honest, but it's not terrible. Now, you get the black suit at the end of Mission 16, Good Men, and then you end up having the black suit and symbiote suit through to level stroke Mission 25, Anything Can Be Broken. So a total of around 9 missions of the game out of the 32, which isn't really an awful lot. The black suit and symbiote suit both sort of work in similar ways, which is a bit of a problem. There's not really too much difference in terms of their gameplay style, just that the dialogue will change through the game. So Peter is a little bit more tamer in the black suit when fighting bad guys, but in the symbiote suit he is a lot more aggressive towards the bad guys, and you'll see that in some of the dialogue. It's interesting that the dialogue changes, and I like that, but I think the move should have changed as well. Like maybe you could have punched further, kicked harder. Some of the abilities that the symbiote and black suit have are really fun and unique. Having tendrils that are able to come out of the back, you can lift up like 4 or 5 guys at one point and slam them to the ground. The symbiote's ability to, when you're near a bad guy on a wall, you're able to like kick them at like 100 miles an hour and then kick them in the chin and they fall to the ground. That's pretty cool. Being able to grab them, throw them around, swing them from left to right. It's really, really good, and you do feel more powerful when you are the symbiote when compared to the advanced red and black suit, which is a good thing. But the problem is that overall it doesn't feel like there's enough of a difference. But the major difference is the symbiote surge, which is this all-out brawl, enraged mode, full-on aggression, where you take very little damage and most of your punches are like one-hit kills or do lots of damage to all the bad guys. And when you're the black suit, it turns you then into the symbiote suit, which is really, really cool. However, when you're in the symbiote suit part of the story and you use symbiote surge, you're just still in the symbiote suit, which I think is a little bit disappointing, if I'm being perfectly honest. It makes you feel more like you're losing control when you're the black suit and then you turn into the symbiote suit, whereas now you're just symbiote into symbiote. I do like the symbiote surge, but it does get a little bit boring after a while, and you're pretty much invincible, which, you know, is nice to feel when you are the black suit or the symbiote suit, that extra power that the normal Spider-Man wouldn't have. But after a while, it does seem to make things a little bit easier, a little bit too easy at times. So overall, the gameplay's not bad, but I think there's definitely areas where it could personally improve. However, finally, we're going to take a deep dive into the story of the symbiote suit in Marvel Insomniacs Spider-Man 2. Finally, it's really important that we talk about the actual story behind the symbiote suit in this game and how it changes Peter throughout the story. Like I said, he gets this symbiote from Mission 16, Good Men, and plays that through to Mission 25, anything can be broken when he finally removes the symbiote. So, in Mission 16, he obtains the symbiote after losing a battle to Kraven the Hunter. He is going with Harry and MJ to rescue Dr. Connors, who has been kidnapped and is about to be turned back into the lizard. He ultimately fails in his mission and ends up getting mortally wounded by Kraven and ends up passing away. However, Harry, who is currently wearing the symbiote, is grieving over Spider-Man, and using that emotion, it seems like the symbiote uses that to then leave Harry and merges with Peter, bringing him back to life in the symbiote suit. Well, the black suit at this point, as it's called. As throughout the game beforehand, the symbiote's been giving subtle signs that it wants to merge with Peter, and sort of hones in on Peter's grief that he has from the first game, where he feels as if he let Aunt May down because he didn't ultimately get to save her, because he had to make the decision to sacrifice his aunt in order to give the cure for Devil's Breath to the rest of the city, and he holds on to that through this game. When Peter first gets the suit, he obviously feels more energized again. He's able to take down all the surrounding thugs. However, he can't remove the symbiote. It's refusing to leave him, and so Harry then, who needed it to survive, is slowly dying. So they put together a plan in order to track down Kraven to get Dr. Connors' cure Connors, who could then hopefully help them remove the symbiote. So Peter tracks down Kraven. He goes to this house party that Kraven's throwing and finds out that Kraven is actually dying of cancer. He does track down Kraven properly at a church, where we see the symbiote first show a bit of weakness to sound as Kraven hits a bell, and you see the symbiote going a bit crazy. At this point, Peter is still mostly himself. He did have one moment of weakness where he was a bit aggressive towards one of the Kraven the Hunter guards, where he threw him out the window and thought he'd broken all of his bones, so told him to put some ice and then swung away. Peter then eventually swings away, but has managed to obtain the cure for Dr. Connors, so then it's just a matter of trying to track down Connors, which he eventually does. He goes to his home and finds out that actually Connors has mutated further, and so teams up with Miles to try and bring Connors back. However, Miles and Peter are not successful in that mission, and you start to see the changes start to affect Peter, as he has had the symbiote at that point for about a day or so, and he is starting to want to fly solo, thinking that Miles is simply in the way. Some aggressive comments start coming out towards Miles through MJ. Peter's talking to MJ on his little intercom as he's swinging through the city, his little earpiece, and says that he'd be better off alone, and MJ tells him that that's a bit unfair and a bit harsh. So you start to notice the symbiote influence him a little bit, honing in again on, I feel like, Peter's grief of, he feels like he needs to do it alone, because, you know, he needs to be the best Spider-Man he possibly can be in order to save everyone. He needs to save everybody. He does track down Connors in the sewers, and they have a big boss battle, which is a really good fight. The first phase of the fight, you see Peter sort of trying to calm Connors down. He's being very sympathetic towards Connors, saying that he's trying to save him. You know, we need to get you back to your wife, your kids. You know, think of all the people that love you, you know. But then the second phase of the fight, it's almost like the symbiote takes over, and he's very aggressive towards Connors. He says things like, this is why your family are afraid of you and left you. It's sort of like the symbiote is then influencing him then. And he does eventually cure Connors, and they go to this secret underground lab where they track down a piece of the meteorite where the symbiote event first fell to Earth, because we find that it's going through that original arc of meteorite crashes. Symbiote comes out and attaches itself to Peter or whoever the host is at the time, and Connors found it and used it to help cure Harry, or find a temporary cure for Harry. But exposure to the meteorite changes the black suit into the symbiote suit as it's becoming more attached to Peter, and Connors is trying to get through to Peter, saying he needs to remove it. But Peter at that point is starting to let the symbiote take control of his mind, and starts to think that this suit is making him a better Spider-Man, so wants to keep it, despite Harry saying that he needs it, and Harry's been getting progressively more ill. Peter then does, he goes home after a long day of fighting the lizard. He's exhausted, he's lying in bed, and MJ's there as well, and the hunters track down Peter. And it sort of goes through the symbiote sort of takes over Peter while he's sleeping and uses his body. And you see a very creepy side to, well, it's not even Peter at this point, it's just the symbiote wearing his body. His eyes are all aggressive, tendrils are coming out, he's attacking all the guards, he's scaring people, causing carnage through the city. MJ has to track him down, and they do track him down to this like subway train carriage, these underground tunnels. Miles steals MJ in, and she has to try and get through to Peter, who's like almost lost at this point. He's let the symbiote consume his grief and everything, and I feel like that's the thing, it's through grief. And they did say that they were trying to do the theme of addiction in this. He's addicted to it by this point, but Peter, obviously being asleep, is not thinking clearly. MJ tracks him down. Peter's unconscious, she wakes him up, but the symbiote thinks that she's attacked him, and so then there's a big chase then where Peter is attacking MJ through the subway, and it is very, very scary. It becomes like a horror game for a brief moment. It is terrifying, and Peter's doing these hisses and growls. Something's not right. And MJ and the crew sort of know this as well, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. I like that MJ can clearly see that something's wrong with Peter, whereas in other versions of the symbiote arc, which we'll get onto in other videos, they sort of can't understand why all of a sudden he's changed, whereas, it's kind of obvious. He's got a new suit, so could it be something to do with that? But in this game, they do show that obviously that MJ understands why Peter is the way he is and he's not right. However, there's a flip side to that, and whereby you could have had some good conflict if MJ wasn't sure why Peter was acting this way. And the only real scene you get of that is the next morning after the Sleepy Peter attack. He goes to Harry to let him know that he's still got the symbiote at the moment. And he sort of has an argument of Harry and an argument of MJ with the classic line, "I'm the hero here, not you." He doesn't understand why they're all angry at him. It's the symbiote clouding his judgment. Miles in this point has gone missing. Craven has captured him to fight off against Martin Lee. So Rio, Miles' mum, summons Peter to go help him find Miles, saying that you've lost your way. Miles just wants to help you. You need to now help him. And this is where the final mission of the symbiote starts to kick in. He finds Craven, and they have a big two-phase battle. Brilliant battle, mind, but Peter is completely lost to the symbiote at this point. He even has a big boss battle against Miles, where that inner conflict is seen, and you can see the reason why he feels like he needs the symbiote. That he just wanted to save everyone, he tells Miles. But Miles convinces him that he's always been the best Spider-Man. He can find a way through it. And Peter does eventually come to his senses and removes the symbiote in the end. It is a very, very interesting arc, but the problem is it's very rushed, in my personal opinion, because you get from him having the symbiote to going from the black suit to the symbiote suit in the span of about 3 or 4 missions. And so he goes from having no changes for the symbiote to having loads of changes. It's too quick. I like the slow, gradual progression, and you could have had that if you would focus the game predominantly on the symbiote arc rather than just throwing it in there, because you've advertised Venom in the end, and so you need to get to Venom, and the way they want to get to Venom is by giving us a black suit arc. So that's kind of unfortunate. I do like the themes that are shown in the symbiote arc. I think using grief and addiction is really, really good, and it's very clear of that in the story, so they do that really, really well, and all the missions with the symbiote are great. I just feel like they rushed it, really. They could have spent a lot more time with the symbiote, developing it better. But that is what I'm going to be talking about in terms of the gameplay. So I'm going to give you now my final thoughts on the symbiote arc in Insomniac Spider-Man 2. And overall, that is going to wrap my first video in this Symbiote Saga on the first one, which is Marvel Insomniacs Spider-Man 2's Symbiote arc. And it was an interesting arc. I would say overall, I'd give this arc a 7 out of 10 because it was enjoyable. I do enjoy the design of the symbiote. I think it's very, very good. I think overall the story is pretty decent, but it is rushed at times. And the gameplay is fun, but it can get repetitive decently quick. So overall, that's why I'm going to give it a 7. But I hope you did enjoy this first little deep dive into the Symbiote Saga. So that was just video 1, but we are going to do more videos. And I'm going to give you a bit of a sneak teaser here on the next one. So the next video, video number 2 in the Symbiote Saga that we're going to look at, is we are going to look at Spider-Man 3, starring Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man stroke Bully Maguire. So I hope you will join me when we eventually look at Spider-Man 3's mini symbiote arc. And I hope you will stick with me for the rest of this series. And can I just say also a huge, massive thank you to the love and support that I had on my previous video, which was a reaction video to a Has Been Hotel music video called Daisies. The amount of love and support that me and my fiance who joined me for that video got was phenomenal, and I cannot thank you enough. But I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, please like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye for now, everyone.